As far as roll call, we have a quorum. We have one person who's absent, David Cushman, but his alternate is here, so we have, we're in good shape. You all have a copy of the agenda, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pam, would you like to lead us in the pledge? The flag's over there.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pam.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, let's have a roll call, starting with my left with Pam.
Here,
I'm obviously here.
Amy Rubio here.
Into the microphone.
Amy Rubio here.
Christina Gonzaga here.
John Beckman here.
Janice Vermeulen here.
Thank you. All right, if we can have.
Tony, I have a question.
Yes. Who is?
Since our scribe is not here, how would we like to have the minutes scribed this evening? I'm happy to do it, but I just,
Well, the normal protocol would be to have the committee, unless there's any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes, accept them as they have been submitted. And that's usually what.
that's correct. I'm talking about for tonight's meeting.
Oh, for tonight is who would, we need a volunteer to, even though we're being recorded, we should have a volunteer.
She said she would volunteer.
Okay, I'll do it.
You said you would do
That takes
it?
care of
Is
it.
that what
Thank
you
you.
said?
I nominate Nicole.
I didn't hear you say you were volunteering, so thank you. I was a little bit delayed. It's not part of the business order of business today, but I have never seen so many nice cars down the Miracle Mile, and they're trick-or-treating, and it took me about 30 minutes, 20 minutes to just get through it. I didn't realize they had a big event going on today in Stockton, but it looked like they were having fun. As far as the approval of the minutes, I'll entertain a motion to have the minutes approved.
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I thought you motioned. That would have been a second. I made the motion.
She made the
Oh.
motion.
Oh, you
I
made the motion.
I entertained,
I'm sorry, I'll second.
I entertained a motion. She made the
Okay.
motion.
I was not present.
I second.
Second, are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? If they're not, accept the minutes as approved by the committee. Our first discussion item, action or possible action requested. The first issue is recommend that the registrar of voters implement and adopt a polling location program and commit the election advisory committee to supporting the project. I hate to put pressure on you, Nicole, but this is a near and dear thing to the supervisor, and I wonder if you could explain his position, Supervisor Ding's position in requesting this be on the agenda.
Yeah, one of the things that Supervisor Ding is near and dear to his heart, obviously, is building community. And since we are post-COVID and people aren't getting out as much yet as they used to be, he had a 80-year-old person come to his restaurant the other evening that hadn't been out of their house in like 2 years. So his main thing is we want to build community. We want to get back to basics with polling locations. I know that in 2016 we had about 329 polling locations, and recently we've been having about 128. So we're looking to find a happy medium, and I know Olivia has some thoughts on that as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to her to speak a little bit, and then want to see how we all as a working committee can do some things to get some people to adopt their polling locations. So that's it. Thank you.
Yes, Olivia, do you have, has he communicated with you his ideas?
Yes, so Supervisor Ding and I, we got an opportunity to get together and speak about this topic. We're definitely looking at what Solano County did in their Adopt a Polling Place program, but John shared with me in via email, John is.
Excuse me, John who?
John is the registrar of, assistant registrar of voters out in Solano County. He's the gentleman that spoke for this committee at a prior meeting.
Thank you.
It took him about 6 years to implement his program all the way. So the first step that our office is going to take is when we're sending out the polling place location request forms that are going to go out next week, we're actually asking every single location, do you want to staff your own polling location? So they may want to adopt their own location, and we want to do that because we want to ensure the folks that are already participating get an opportunity to participate in the new program. So that'll be step one. John in Solano County shared with me he had about 4 polling places in the first election, and then it was about 8, and then 12, and so it progressed year after year, and now they've engaged in a full-on adopt a polling location program. And so he shared with me something they're doing on their website platform where people can sign up to request to adopt a polling place. So I'll be working closely with their ROV, with John, to find out how he implemented it. But the first step will be allowing the locations we currently have to make that decision. When we say adopt a polling location, it doesn't change them getting paid their stipend. So every poll worker will still get their payment for working election day. Every location will still get their $100 payment for volunteering to be a location. And then it would be up to those members if they choose to donate it back to their church or keep it, whatever they do. Our office would not get involved in that. We don't have just free workers, so we still pay everyone. So adopt a polling location, to be clear, would still allow them to get their stipend, participate in democracy, and if they already are serving at a location, an opportunity to adopt a location they're already working at.
All right, with that, what's important in this, number one, is commit the election advisory committee to supporting the project. And so I would guess that the committee might have questions. And when you say that it's time away, it's not really ready yet, it's not a complete project that you'd present to us yet before we would commit. But if the committee feels otherwise and feel they want to prematurely, in my opinion, adopt that, I think it would be in spirit only until we put the meat on the bones. And so we're not there yet, are we?
Well, we would want to make that decision because, like I said, we're getting ready to mail those cards out next week. And so my staff actually has a placeholder right now. If with your support, we would continue moving forward with the idea that they have the option to adopt it. So right now would be the time to make it. Before we ask people, do they want to participate in an adopt a poll program, I think now would be a preferred decision to have your support. I know with some of the recent events, the idea is that we're all in alignment before we move forward. Without Supervisor Ding here to speak about it, I think his intent was to have your support so we can move forward next week with our mailings and getting the community involved with the project.
Before I open up to the committee, I think Supervisor Dean, couldn't he on his own ask you to do the work, the background on this first before we make a formal adoption of supporting it, before we see what it is?
Can you answer that?
And maybe Nicole might be the better person to speak for
I
the
think he
supervisor.
has done that. I mean, he's met with Olivia, and the whole idea of, maybe this is not worded correctly, but the whole idea was to, being that this is a working committee, maybe this is a project that the committee would like to work on. I have a feeling it's going to move forward. We're going to all start working on it, but I think his idea was he wanted to see if the committee wanted to work on it as well and reach out to their various groups, their Kiwanis, their Rotary or YMCA or whatever groups that you might be affiliated with or that you know about in the community, to let them know about it as you're out there in your day-to-day goings on. So just to be part of it.
Yeah, we're a pretty powerful, influential group. Before I entertain a motion to formally go forward, I'd like to hear from our committee first and your thoughts on it before I share my thoughts. Can we start with Janice and just go around the table?
I'm in favor of it. I would love to be able to have some information to bring to some of the groups that I wanted to talk to. I don't know if you have that available, but I'm in favor of going
Can you
ahead with it.
speak into it because I'm hard of hearing?
Do you want me to repeat it?
is no.
So, Tony, if I understand this correctly, it seems like the Adopt a Polling Location program is something the registrar is intending on doing. And we're being asked if we want to commit to support it. And I don't know what that commitment would be and how we would support it. It sounds like it's something you are going to do. And I'm not even sure exactly what it is. If you're going to do it, great. I don't have a problem with that because I don't know enough about it. But before I commit to volunteering to do something, I'd like to know what it is I'm doing.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good idea, but like he said, I don't really know what you're wanting out of us for supporting it, but it does sound like a good idea. I mean, I have some groups in mind that would probably like to do something like that, but
I support the idea. I work for the fire department. We host polling places, and I would imagine what you're suggesting would be, I could reach out to the local firefighters union to say, hey guys, here's your time, this is your home away from home anyways. You could volunteer, participate in democracy, the process, and host the polling site that we already host, instead of you pushing in your volunteers, correct?
Pamela?
Thank you.
Well, I'm in support. If I'm hearing correctly, you're asking us in support, one way to support is to help come up with areas that might be polling places. Is that correct?
Yes, anything in addition to what we already have, and if they don't have a location, we have plenty of locations, and maybe we can say, well, we have this elementary school, would you and your team like to adopt this location? And then that team would be responsible every election for getting their group together and staffing that location.
So basically, it's more of an engagement of the community to get involved in the election process is what you're asking, correct?
Correct, and I think that's what Supervisor Dean would also.
I think that's what the message I got. How many polling places are we looking for?
We will have a maximum of 200 because that's what we have enough equipment for. In the November 2022 election, it was 178 locations, and in the 2022 primary, we had 127. And there's a lot of detail that goes into it. It's based on consolidation of precincts that become voting precincts, how many voters are actually registered. So there's quite a process to that, but our goal is to we can't go beyond 200, but we want to make sure we're in compliance of the code and that we're offering services. A little more background that might be helpful to you all is in this 2022 primary, we had 61 locations that had less than 50 voters. We had 14 locations that had more than 200 voters. And so we do have lots of polling locations where we're not getting the engagement of the community. And so us pushing the vote in person initiative for folks to know that that is an option and they're able to do that, we're hoping to see an influx. So I couldn't imagine us having an extensive amount of more polling places. The goal would be to get voters out to the polling places we have because we don't have voters actually showing up to what we already have.
To help out, in
Yes.
other words. So there will be proper training and all that involved?
Absolutely.
And since some of us have expressed that we're not quite sure what that involves and what you're asking of a polling place or people to get involved, do they then just contact your office to get that information?
Correct. So they would sign up just like an election officer, letting us know that they're interested. Whoever they want to put at that location, everyone would have to be on file in our system so they can get their stipend. They're required by election code to attend election officer training. So they would all go to an online training, and then we have a lab where they would go out and physically get the opportunity to learn the equipment that we have out there. And so it would just be like if you walked off the street and said, I want to be a election officer, it would be the same exact experience for anybody signing up through the Adopt a Poll. It's just it would be them and their group of friends hosting that polling place and staffing it versus us putting 6 strangers there. Now we'll be putting a group of folks that want to run their polling place as a group.
Well, thank you for the clarity. I think that helps all of us a lot about what's involved here. I wasn't quite sure myself, and I just want to make sure that people are trained properly, that they're just not out there and say, oh, do this, do that, but to actually know what is expected of them, so.
And they'll still have access to our help desk on election day. Every polling place, the staff there has access. We issue them a cell phone, and they're able to call in, and they get support from county staff on election day if they need it. So no one's ever left out there in the dark. They have the
So
information.
I support that. Okay.
Well, I think you get a good sense, and I agree, concur with the group in supporting the project. I would have questions, I guess they might have to come later on when you present something, but is 200 the cap? Would there be an idea of changing the locations where it makes more sense to have it? Is there's the evaluation process that you do will be taken and given to the supervisors or to us to consider before formal adoption in our committee and endorsing those locations? But conceptually, I think you get a good sense of where we're at, that the idea is good. I think that's what Supervisor Ding wanted, and he talked about it many, many times about the community supporting these polling places. I didn't know there's a cap. I didn't know if we could have more, or would we end up with less, which I, of course, would not want. I think most people don't want less. We want more locations and opportunities to vote. We want to encourage people to vote. So I don't think it requires, unless someone else thinks we need a motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I wanted to be an election officer, what would be required of me, and what would I be expected to do?
The details would be the registrar of voters who would tell you what would be required. I would not know, quite honestly, and but if you wanted to do that, I think you'd contact their office first. Am I correct?
You're correct. There's an application on our website that you could either fill out, or you can fill one out in person if you prefer, whatever your preference is. We input you into our election officer database. You say that you're willing to work the election. We put a yes next to your name. Once we're done with choosing all the locations based on the precincting and consolidations that we do, then we assign staff based, and you can say, I'm willing to work 5 miles from my house, 10 miles from my house, all the information you give us on your application, and then we sign people accordingly. With the Adopt a Poll program, the only difference would be is you're saying, hey, I'm willing to work and I have 5 of my friends. You may say you already have your church that you want to sign up. So if your church is not already one of our locations, we will send a team out to do the ADA survey on your location. We will do our best to choose your location, and that's where it gets a little tricky, is the way consolidations work. We pick locations based on how the consolidations are formed, and it depends on what actually goes to ballot. So it's a very intricate process, but the Adopt a Poll program and the election officer that signs up that way versus traditionally would be the same process. You fill out an application before, about 30 days before the election. We send you to the online training. We let you know the dates of the labs to go out, and then you go out to our the Ag Center out on Arch Road, and that's where we set up the labs so you can practice with all the equipment and all of that. So it's the same process either way. The Adopt a Poll program is just to create that community engagement and giving clubs and community organizations an opportunity to, as a group, be a part of the process.
Cool.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something that if you're going to be on the election advisory committee, you might want to have experience doing that once.
You
He's
guys want your own
encouraging you
polling
all
place?
to do that.
We're going to get you guys together and get you your own polling
Yes.
place.
I think
That'd be
when you
great.
brought up John's name, the Solano County, everybody was favorably disposed to his best practices. And so if that is a model or something we're going to follow, I know Supervisor Ding did like that, and I think most of us here did, so I'm glad to hear that you'd be doing something like that.
And there are some limitations because Solano County is much smaller as far as their voter totals, and he does something where he keeps, they don't have the same type of growth issue, or not that it's an issue, but you know, our county is rapidly growing, and so he's able to have like the same polling places every single election, but he only has 70 of them. He did like some super thing, and the way I'm interpreting the code and as talking to other ROVs, including Stanislaus, we need to be mindful of the fact that because we have a lot of rapid growth, there's a difference in San Joaquin versus Solano, so we're going to apply it the best we can, keeping in mind that we are San Joaquin and not Solano, so there might be some small things there, some small adjustments that are necessary for our county specifically. So,
Okay, thank you. Anything else on item 1? If not, we'll move to item 2, and recommend that the Board of Supervisors allocate a new position within the Sheriff's Office with the sole purpose of enforcing the penal provisions within the California Elections Code. Just to refresh the committee's memory, we had a good presentation from the Sheriff's Department, And part of their presentation, and I know this is a budgetary issue that would have to go through the county administrative officer and the board of supervisors in toto to add a position. But the position at the time appeared very key, very important. And I know in all of the presentations we've had, I had more of a global attitude about dealing with the folks that make presentations with the proper respect. And I'd probably asked for too much last time, but we'll do it a bite at a time. And I think this is one of the first bites after the sheriff's presentation. And the item is on the agenda because I'd requested it, but also I think a lot of people support that idea of having someone's breaking the law. We should have someone who is expertise in the area. They would be the only ones that I know of in the whole state of California that would have and develop that type of expertise. And with their challenges that they've had in the city of Lodi and other things that may come up, I thought it was a great idea, but I wanted to know how the committee felt in us recommending to the Board of Supervisors an allocation of a new position within the sheriff's office for the sole purpose of enforcing penal provisions within the California Elections Code. So Pam, do you mind me starting with you? Do you have any thoughts on number 2 for a discussion item?
I think it's a good idea. The only thing I would be interested in if this impacts the budget in any way, and if so, what is that impact? I think it's important to think about, you just don't add positions without looking into that particular factor. So I would be interested to know what kind of position this would be, and I mean, in terms of cost, and if that's doable for that department. That would be the only thing. Otherwise, I think it's probably a good idea.
Thank you.
I don't have a comment on this one.
Amy passes? Yes.
I think it's a good idea to have, but how would they, like, get trained for it? I mean, how would that all go? I mean, how would they do their job? I mean, if there hasn't ever been a position like this before, like, how are, you know, I guess I'm just wondering, like, how would that?
I think they would be the first person in the state, the first entity to do it. And you're my alternate, so I'm treating you as a regular.
No, she's
Not
Can't
me.
have two.
No.
And I just thought of John, and I thought, wait, he's going to speak next, but he can't speak for me. I'm here. But anyway, there is no other position in the state. They would be trailblazers
So
in
they
doing
would be
this.
the pilot
And
program.
with the work that they've done, I think that would be up to them to justify the position, explain it to the Board of Supervisors and the county administrative officer as to what it would cost and all of those things that are technical, what the position would actually do. So those are, I think we start conceptually with the idea. Are we going to adopt it conceptually and then move forward and let the details be worked out by the people who are smarter than us as far as budgets and what has to be done?
Well, I think it's a good idea because laws are only good if they're enforced.
Thank you.
After
Janice.
listening to their presentation, I think it's an excellent idea, and I think that they are in favor of it also. So maybe it's somebody in the department already that would want to step up and do this, but I think it's an excellent idea.
All right, so as far as recommend the Board of Supervisors allocate a new position within that, we can do that. I'd like to do it by a motion so that it's official, something we've officially done today as far as an action. So I'd entertain a motion that we take the recommendation to the Board of Supervisors and allocate a new position within the Sheriff's Department for that purpose.
Mr. Chairman, before you entertain a motion, I want to offer a couple comments. And before you entertain a motion, you might want to open it up to the public for public comments before we vote on it. But my commentary would be that I think this was my original idea, so I apologize if it's a bad one. But the reason I thought it might be a good idea is largely because I understood from the sheriff's department and the DA that there's nobody in the state of California who's technically trained or has any specialty in investigating this type of stuff. That there's no resource, that there's no specialty in the law enforcement realm that does that. It would be great if San Joaquin County was the first one to have somebody who's dedicated to doing that. The Registrar of Voters Office does an excellent job of applying election law, but they don't enforce it in the sense that they're not a law enforcement agency. The Registrar's Office has no police power, and they have no police authority. So having a dedicated law enforcement person to augment what the registrar is doing and to work hand in hand as an investigator with them applying election law, which I'm sure they apply election law great, but they can't enforce it the way that the sheriff's department could. So that's why I think it would be important to have that position. A fully staffed sheriff's deputy probably is in the realm of $200,000 hit to the budget, ballpark. I think the cost of the citizens knowing that their elections are being watched over by a law enforcement entity, the calm, the peacefulness, the assurance that the community would get by that is $200,000 cheap for that to be the peace of mind we have. So that's my theory on it. Thank you.
All right, he made public comment, so we moved public comment ahead of the presentation report. Before we go forward, let the Registrar of Voters, she has a comment.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just going to share too, is like we get phone calls before and like during election time. Well, they have their signs up too early. We know there's a municipal code for every city. There's a county ordinance for signage, and there's the Department of Transportation. So it would be nice for even my organization, because like you shared, I don't have any authority in that regard. So if this is something that you all wanted to move forward for, I can see outside of just, oh, are we getting fraudulent ballots? It would definitely be important to also look at the full scope of what happens in elections. So just so you know, there are some things there. With that being said, the sheriff's office does already have a special services unit, and those were the folks that did this investigation for the Lodi investigation. I would say that maybe hearing from our sheriff and his perspective on this might be something of value. I don't think I have enough say or value in this because you're asking for a law enforcement officer, and that's way out of my realm. So, I mean, my staff and what we would be willing to share is whatever administratively we can share with, we couldn't give an officer their training, but we can definitely share our resources. But that's about the extent of what I could offer for that.
Let me clarify something for the record. They, in fact, in writing, did request a position. So if they were doing other work, they had to pull it from other staff. So they have reduced this to writing and have requested a new position if it happens. They're asking for the committee's endorsement of that or support of that, and that's what I'm proposing. That's why it is on the agenda. So it would be a new position to their budget. They're not going to suffer a diminution of their budget authority now. It would be an addition to. Our public comment is after the presentation. I would like to hear from the public on this, but I want to do it in an order. So if I can defer a formal vote until after we hear from the public, I'm going to preserve entertaining a vote on item number 2 until after the presentation of the reports, and then we'll go to public comment, because it would be important for the public to give us their opinions on what they think about this recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, don't we have allow the public to comment on action items before we take action outside of the public comments specified on the agenda?
According to the official agenda put together by our administrative office.
Let me rephrase that. The public comment that's listed on the agenda is for general public comments, not specific to an agendized item. Each agendized item, before we take action, we should allow the public to comment on that agendized item. The public comment period is for non-agenda items.
Chairman, that is correct. If you want to entertain comments on this particular.
On this
case,
particular one, I can go out of
yes.
order and go ahead and do that? No.
It wouldn't it wouldn't be out of order. You
Okay.
can request if there's public
Well,
comment on
then,
this item.
let's,
and then-
let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that, and we'll do the report afterwards. Thank you. Anybody from the public like to comment on this issue? Yes, state your name and.
Yes, my name is David Robb. I actually have had fairly close contact in some areas. Oh, okay. David Robb, and I've had close contact with the Sheriff's Department in some of our election integrity investigations. And I can agree with our ROV that it would be very important to have the sheriff's input on it. I understand that they provided a written request. How that particular position would be administered, who would be involved, and those sorts of things are definitely questions that would need to be answered, and the sheriff's input should be solicited on that. Also, in talking with not only our sheriff, but with other counties, I agree that there is virtually no training or background that people have in the state on what actually constitutes enforceable issues. And most sheriffs really are reluctant to get involved because they don't have the training. They don't have a background in the requisite election law. They don't, in many cases, don't even know the difference between which ones are civil and which ones are criminal areas. So while I'm definitely in favor of getting more support in our sheriff's office on this issue, I do definitely agree that we need to get their input and their participation before actually going ahead and establishing a position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Name, rank, and serial number.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening. Yeah, I want to say that I support having the sheriff be involved. We absolutely need to be able to enforce election laws that are broken. And how do we do that when the ROV is unable to? We need to have our do it. And I would be very welcome and open to trailblazing in this in the state of California. Thank you very much. Oh, Holly Moore. That's my name. Sorry, I said this, but I didn't do it. Holly Moore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly. Anyone else? The crowd is thinning. All right, with that, we gave him the opportunity. Thank you, John. And so we will, I would entertain a motion then that we recommend the Board of Supervisors allocate a new position. The details obviously are out of our hands, but the motion simply recommend we allocate a new position with the Sheriff's Department for the sole purpose of enforcing penal provisions within the California Election Code. Anybody like to make that motion? It has to be one of the 4 members
I will
here.
make that motion, Chair.
Thank you. Motion made. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion necessary? If not, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, say aye.
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 I will vote yes because we would have a tie otherwise. I will make or break that tie. I vote yes.
I'll vote yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, your silence was a...
I was, I've got this
All right.
going on.
For the record, the motion passes 3-0. 3, I only make or break ties.
Okay.
So we'll now move to the presentation reports. Receive a report from the Registrar of Voters on the department's signature verification process.
Before we move on, if it's okay, my staff brought down some applications for election officer and also polling locations. So anyone that wishes to grab them, we can provide those at the end, just backtracking a little bit. So I'm just gonna give an oral report about what we do for signature verification. So nothing has changed in the essence that the requirements set forth in the code, we're still complying by that. There's been no updates to the law in reference to signature verification, but processes and procedures is something that we do have control over and what we can do more of. So going forward, what we've done is there's been a remodel in our suite that has allowed us to put the signature verification area. There's 16 signature verification stations. They're behind a clear glass so the public can clearly come in and observe everything that's happening in that area. We have added more staff, permanent staff to our team. So we're gonna be able to put permanent and temporary staff in that area during the election. So it'll be 3 levels of signature verification, but everything will be done in teams of 2 now, always in our organization. After what we learned with the sheriff's office, what we learned as we move forward, and just the concern of our public. If there's a concern, we need to do something. And so this is what we are gonna do going forward. So the first level of signature verification will be done by a team of 2. That would be a temporary county employee and a permanent staff member of the ROV. The second level, if there is a challenge signature, would go to a specialist and supervisor team that would then verify those signatures. And if there is still a verification issue, it'll go to management and to the assistant registrar and myself. So there will always be teams of 2 checking signatures as a procedure internally for us, and we will always have the 3 levels of signature verification occurring to avoid that. With that being said, our AROV actually pulled all of the data for our signature verification over the last election, and he's monitoring. You can only check signatures so fast, so he's monitoring that, and it's something that he can monitor daily as we're moving into the election. So we will be very mindful of that. October 17th, they had the signature verification training. The staff is only required to attend that training once, but we actually have them attend it every year when it's available, just to keep them fresh and up to date on it. It's the same verification as we've done in the last several years, but they've attended that just on earlier this week. And that's how we're moving forward with signature verification. And then I'm open to answer any questions you all might have as we move forward on the topic of signature verification.
Any questions? I have one if they don't have any questions. The 17th of November, did you say?
October, we just had it. It was this week.
Oh, it already happened.
Yeah,
I
just
would have loved to
Tuesday.
do something like that.
So it's
Verify.
only offered to election officials, but I do have the packet, so you're more than welcome to see it. If you all would like to review that material, I can put it on as a consent item at your next meeting.
I would love that. I'd like to look at that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, we have now public comment from the public. And if you'll fill out the sheet, identify yourself, and make your comments. Anybody like to comment to the committee? So far we only have one. David Robb, would you take the microphone?
Thank you, David Robb again. Signature verification validation has been a particular concern of mine for some time. I actually have several decades of experience in pattern recognition, which is part and parcel of this. My current business detecting explosives, drugs, and other sorts of things, and people and materials depends extensively
Would you
on-
speak into the microphone a little bit better?
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
My experience has depended extensively on the ability to accurately determine patterns, recognize patterns in a variety of settings. I have researched various aspects of signature verification validation. In fact, I have submitted some public requests to our ROV in that regard. as far as I've been able to determine, we really haven't got any good information on how well signature verification validation operates to detect fraudulent ballots, improper ballots. About the only thing that I can see that we actually do detect reliably is missing signatures. Would you care to comment on that, please? Or can
You have
we do
to,
this?
your general comments, no, you can't have one-on-one with,
Okay. So, okay, based on what I got back from the ROV, there was there were no studies done on how effective signature verification was in detecting fraudulent ballots. The ROV's office had not done any studies, and in search of the public literature, there's not really a lot of information available. So given that election fraud is a significant concern to all of us, I guess I would like to know what we might do to know that our particularly mail-in ballots are being properly checked for their contents, if you will. And one of the things that we have proposed to the board in the past is that they commission a study, perhaps using one of our local universities, to actually look at how effective signature verification validation processes are. I know that we've talked about the Sheriff's Department and the ability to pursue election issues legally. Having information on the effectiveness of signature validation would be a nice adjunct to that, and something potentially that could be added to the sheriff's capabilities in terms of identifying election fraud and actually going out and pursuing people who commit it. So I would recommend that the board or the committee here encourage the board to do some investigation into just how effective signature validation is, verification is, in terms of addressing the concerns around mail-in ballots. So,
thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else? All right, if there's no other public comment, okay. Did you fill out a card, ma'am? For the record, is it
Actually, it's Mihail Arab.
Mihala? Okay, thank you.
Yes, I would like to read for the public and for the record the request of the San Joaquin registered of voter as of May 11, 2023. And the request, point number 1, states, please provide copies of all documents describing test protocols, test results, and associated reports of any and all tests conducted by or for the San Joaquin Register of Voters that were conducted to establish the accuracy and efficacy of signature checks in detecting fraudulent ballots. Specifically, any documents that contained detailed description of the number of signatures used in the test, the sources of the signatures, the number of valid signatures used, the number of false probe signature used, the number of signatures rejected for lack of match, the number of match signatures, the error rate in matching, the rate of false acceptance, and documents discussed in the test results. The document particularly should indicate what relationship the results bear to the signature verification process used by ROV to validate signature on election ballot envelopes. And the response on June 5th, 2023 states, as of this date, our office has determined that the Register of Voters office is not in possession of any documents or information related to your request. Despite our efforts, we have been unable to identify any records that meet the criteria outlined in your request. And another point, point number 4, says, please provide copy of any and all documents of signature validation testing performed by parties responsible for training signature inspectors. The documents should include the same type of materials requested in number 1 above. The response was, as of this date, our office has determined that the Register of Voters office is not in possession of any documents or information related to your request. Despite our efforts, we have been unable to identify any records that meet the criteria outlined in your request. So in the absence of any tests, how can we trust that this process really works? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? If not, we will move to the Registrar of Voters' comments, and perhaps she can address some of these if she chooses. Obviously, I'm not requesting, maybe at a later date, because these are both directed towards your office. So.
I have the legislative update for you just on where we're at with some of the I think many of you might have seen in the news some of the stuff that had passed over the last few weeks, and so I wanted to give a short update on 2 urgency bills that passed, and then I want to move into just a few things that I noticed that I wanted to share with the group. So the 2 urgency bills that were passed, we had AB 773. Basically, that's just determining who the lead county is. So like if there's a shared county district, like a assembly district or congressional, basically when they're filing their candidate statement, the lead county needs to provide that information to the county that's the secondary county. So that was one, and that's in reference to the candidate statements. And then the big one was also AB 969. We are no longer allowed in the state of California to conduct elections if, with a hand count if it's less than 1,000 voters in the district. So those were the 2 big things that were pushed forward as urgency bills. So I wanted to share that with you. A couple of things that stuck out to me is reporting results. We now, as of January 2024, will need to do that 3 times a week. That's something that our office is already committed to, so it won't be a change for our department. There was a little bit about signature verification, that if we do challenge a signature, that we can reach out to voters by email, telephone, or by a text message if we have the information available. So we would still send the traditional cure letter to them, but we'd also additionally reach out to them with one of those other methodologies as well. Let's see, what else do we got here? Another one was Senate Bill 386. It was just sharing that we would continue using the random sample method when doing signature verification with petitions. And then there was another one, Senate Bill 485 for election worker protections, and just letting people know that it's a crime to be unlawful and to hold an election, or to basically you can't interfere with an election, and also this hasn't been a problem, I don't think, in our state too much, but just reaching out and like any aggressive contact with elections officials, not just myself, but any of us, anyone that's working in an election is designated as an elections official, so it'd cover all of those folks. There was something that passed for Assembly Bill 545, more accessibility for voters with disabilities, just having us, we already do curbside voting in our county, so we would continue to do what we're doing to service a voter at their car if they're unable to get into their polling place. Let's see. All right, the vote by mail, this was the big one that I thought would be of interest to the committee here, is California Assembly Bill 626, vote by mail ballots in person. So now if a person does not want to cast their vote by mail ballot in an envelope, they can actually go to a polling place, remove it from the envelope, sign the poll pad, and put their vote by mail ballot into the, it can be, as we refer to in our world, a naked ballot without an envelope. It can go in once they've verified and signed on the poll pad. So that was a big one that I thought would be of interest. And then outside of that, they're all, those were the ones that I wanted to share with you today. Yeah, that was it. That was the ones that I wanted to bring to your attention today. And then there was some stuff, Assembly Bill 1219 talked about the design of the ballot and some of the language that we would put on there. And this information is readily available on the Secretary of State's website, or anywhere that you're looking at election bills. Even on legislative info, you can see all of this information. So, and that's it. That's all I have for you.
Thank you. What I want to do is give the committee an opportunity to ask you any questions. I know you went really quick on those, but they might have taken notes on something that perked their interest, because I do have one question, but I want to give the committee an opportunity to ask any questions. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. You mentioned cure letters, and I apologize if you've provided this data before, but what was the number of cure letters that went out for the last election?
I hope I don't tank this. I think we sent out about 3,000 or so, and we were able to cure all but like 1,200, but my numbers could be not vastly skewed, but definitely not 100% accurate, but it was somewhere in that ballpark.
When you send a cure letter to a voter, are they flagged for maybe the next time there's an election? Are they subject to a cure letter again?
So this was an interesting question that you asked, because one of my staff members actually brought this up. Is we have a voter, one particular voter, I'm not going to share a name or anything, but they have an issue with signing, and so every single election they're getting flagged for this. And so what can we do to ensure that we document the voter's file? And so I never worked in registration before I was the ROV, but I worked in all of the other departments throughout our unit, or throughout our department in the different units. And there's an ability to put a remark in the comments for that voter's file. So on a one-off basis, if we have a specific situation, we're going to try to do our best to make sure we're documenting for that voter so that they don't have to go through that process every single time. But if the signature doesn't match, we're required to send that letter. So we want to look into how can we make sure that voter doesn't feel like they're being picked on every single election. But from what I know, I only know of about one voter that we've had that circumstance with. So
I think you have a new one, because my son got one.
Oh, okay.
He's only 20. He was very angry, and it was a teaching moment, He's disabled, so signing is an issue. So I was just wondering if there was something. I'll offline give you his information so we can maybe add that note.
We can send staff out and capture a signature for him so we have it correct.
Yeah,
I'll work
awesome.
with you to make sure we take care of
That's
that. And
awesome.
if that exists for any voter, like, they can reach out to us and we can address that, definitely.
Yeah.
Pamela, do you have any questions?
I got a question. One of the laws you.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me recognize you first. I recognize your face, but let me get the committee here first. You have no questions? Before I open it up, I had just one comment on no hand count. AB 969 has to be 1,000 votes. We wouldn't even have that happen in San Joaquin County. There wouldn't be anything. It would be less than 1,000 votes, would there?
So if a special election's called, so we actually just had one for Oakdale Joint Unified, it was 218 voters. We received back 54 ballots, so they were hand counted.
So you'd be mandated not to do a hand count?
If it's more than 1,000 voters, we can't do a hand count, but if it's less than 1,000 voters, the county has the option to hand count if they so choose.
Okay, let me open it up to the alternates. You had a question, John?
One of the new legislation bills you described, somebody has a mail-in ballot that they've signed. They can walk into a polling place. The polling folks get that ballot. They open it up.
No, the voter can open their ballot.
The voter opens it up, takes the ballot out of the envelope, and then that ballot goes in with all the other ballots.
Yes.
And the envelope then that was not verified with anybody's signature anywhere, because they didn't happen to have the signature of that voter there at the time. Am I tracking that right?
So no, they would have to still, we'd pull up the voter in the poll pad. So I'm coming in with my vote by mail ballot. Now I don't want to cast a vote by mail ballot. I want to cast an in-person ballot, but I don't want one of yours. I want the one that was mailed to me. So I'm able to go over to the poll pad. They pull up the person's name. They verify that they haven't turned in a ballot yet. The person can sign it, and then they can open that ballot up and vote it as an in-person ballot.
Okay, so every polling place has people there on site who do signature verification at that moment.
There would be the signature verification would be the voter signing the poll pad. So they would be signing in the poll pad verifying.
Oh, okay, so it's not the
Yes.
signature on the envelope that's checked. It's
Not in
their
this
signature
instance.
on the poll pad, and then that is checked.
that is what is captured, and that's made part of the official record for that voter. So
who-
if a
Who verifies that signature, though?
the poll pad signatures are just information we get back. We only look at those if there is an issue, if a voter brings it to our attention that there was an issue. Like, so if you go and say, and it says you already voted, you're like, no, I didn't, we're gonna pull that data and verify it. We do keep that data, though.
Okay, so you keep that data, you check it, and you realize, oh, the signature doesn't match. But the naked ballot was already put into the ballot pool of valid ballots.
Correct. That's what the
Okay,
legislation is.
I just wanted to make sure I was tracking that
Yes.
correctly.
And,
Okay.
and to be fair too, just full disclosure, I learned about this about 10 days ago. So now I'm looking at like, how can we implement this and do a good job at it? So I have to dig really deep. That'll be the one. I wanted to share it with you all, but we need to dig into that and figure exactly what the procedure and process is going to be. So I'm working with all the other officials across the state. What does this look like for us? So.
Looks like another loophole for voter fraud, but okay, my opinion.
All right, any other comments? Registrar of Voters, do you have any more comment?
No, that's
Okay.
it. That's all I have for this evening.
All right,
Thank you.
item number 7, committee comments. Anybody have any comments for the committee, from the committee? Well, I feel bad because I do have some comments, but I don't feel that bad. We've had some good presentations from different folks, and my recommendation was to have dignity given to everybody who made presentations, and act as a committee in some form, so that they don't feel like they came up here and just wasted their time and were just treated with pablum. And one of the committees, one of our presenters was Mr. Rob, and the term churn came up, and I was educating myself on the term churn. And it's something that I'd like to learn more about. And so I don't know how in the future agenda, and I don't know how the committee feels, but if you're all very familiar with churn, you could educate me. But that's going to come up. I thought the Dropbox presentation had some interesting things that we should do, and I know we're moving forward in that with the support of the supervisor as far as adopting locations and things like that, which is a step up. But I had asked the registrar of voters some time ago, when someone dumps a whole bin of ballots into a drop box, and if any of them are checked for signatures, someone obviously gave them permission to take their ballot and put it in a drop box, and that has never been addressed. And I think the public comment, I think it's on record, is that you don't check those signatures. And so I am very interested in that issue not just going away. If I'm going to get robbed of an election by somebody, when I ran for Congress, because he dumped more than one bin of ballots into one of those drop boxes, and they weren't even checked to see if his signature was on it, authorized to take someone else's ballot, that's a little irritating to me, not just as a candidate, but the public at large, I think, would be interested in that. So prospectively, I don't want folks to think that the issue's dead. We don't need to debate it or talk about it now, but it is going to be addressed by myself in the future, because there are some things that we have to continue to be diligent about in order to give the public confidence in the election process. I don't think we're there now, but I do think we are making great inroads, and I appreciate the Registrar of Voters' cooperation and your support. I didn't serve on this committee just to be stroked. I don't need a committee. I've served on other committees. I've had great opportunities in my life to serve, but I'm going to do something about this committee. It's going to be a real thing. It's not just going to, and if people want my resignation, I'm not threatening resignation. It's too fun to be in this position here. But I think we have more work to do. I don't think the public, and this is that's why I gave my colleagues here an opportunity to speak, because I think we cannot, as a committee, say, oh, everything is hunky-dory. We got the greatest system in the world, no problem. and I'm not at that point yet. So that is all my committee comments, and now I may have stirred other people who didn't have any committee comments to maybe want to comment now. But if not, we're to the point where we're going to schedule our next meeting. I am looking at, because I want this to be a working committee because we're not done, maybe the next meeting be, I'm suggesting the 16th. We don't want to have it on Thanksgiving, which would be the following week. And we certainly don't need a meeting in December, the whole month. So after November 16th, I'm suggesting that we not meet again until January. There's a lot of work that the registrar of voters and all of us have to be doing. Unless there's an objection, I'm scheduling the next meeting for November 16th.
Through the chair, so something that's important is I learned from our IT team that if we have our meeting the same day as the Planning Commission, we were fortunate this evening, the Planning Commission was canceled. They want to be able to use the main San Joaquin County YouTube streaming link, and we want to make sure we're not confusing the public, and so it is recommended that we don't have meetings on nights of the Planning Commission.
How
And
about the 18th, the day before, Wednesday the 18th? No, that's not the 18th, I'm sorry, November.
And then I think, Nicole, did you have something to add about the third Thursdays being I don't know, are we gonna stick to Thursdays? I think it's important to keep in mind that was
Well,
Supervisor Ding.
unfortunately, because Supervisor Ding has a lot of the municipal advisory council meetings, all of them are in his district, and many of them meet on various Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. It was determined that the second Thursday was open, and the third and fourth are not. And then various other as well. So our request would be to keep them if they're going to be happening on the second Thursday, for whatever that's worth.
And that would be November 9th, just to chime in.
I think it's important to have the meeting, whether I'm here or not. I won't be here that day, but that's why we have a vice chairman. Then I would propose it be the 9th. But I think we have to be a working committee. We just can't wait till next year because issues will be coming up. Then I would suggest it be the 9th and Thursday the 9th. If there's no objection, we'll set the next meeting for that date.
Mr. Chairman, I can't be here on the 9th. That's okay.
All right, if we'll have the vice chairman, then we'll hopefully be here. He's ill, maybe he'll be better then. But I think the world moves on without you and I here. So we'll have a meeting. I think the committee's more important than our individual schedules that can't allow us to be here. I am going to adjourn to the next meeting, and thank you all for being here.